folks. In this video, we're going to talk about collision theory. So by the end of this video, you're going to be able to describe the process by which chemical reactions occur, and you're going to start to think about what impacts how fast or how slow a chemical reaction, what impacts how fast so the goals, by the end of this video, you're going to be able to describe the process by which chemical reactions occur and what is necessary for a reaction to happen. And then to begin to explore or think about what impacts how fast a chemical reaction occurs. Okay. All right, let's get started. So let's think about how chemical reactions occur. I have on the slide here a chemical reaction where I'm taking A2 plus B2 and I'm turning it into 2AB. Right, so if I think about what this actually looks like, right, I'm going to draw a particle level diagram just below where I'm going to use, so this is my A2 molecule here, and this is my B2 molecule here, right, and those two react with each other to create two molecules of AB. Right, so as we learned about in class, right, remember that all chemical reactions involve some sort of bond breaking and bond making. So in this case, the bonds that I'm breaking, right, are the bonds between A and B, right, and the bonds that I'm making are the bonds between A and B, and I'm making two of those, okay, something to keep in mind. So, okay, cool. What has to happen in order for this reaction to occur, right? In order for these bonds to break and bonds to make, there's two things that need to happen. The first thing that needs to happen is that A2 and B2 have to collide, right? So the first thing that we're going to look for is we're going to look for a collision between A2 and B2. They have to run into each other. Just like you can't score a goal without kicking the soccer ball, can't hit a home run without the ball making contact with the bat. Those two reactant molecules need to run into each other, okay? But it's not enough that they run into each other. Just like every time you hit the ball, it's not a home run, right? And every time you kick a soccer ball, you don't score a goal. Every time A2 and B2 run into each other does not result in a reaction. There are two conditions that need to be met for this collision in order for a reaction to occur. The first one is that it has to have enough energy. And we'll talk about what we mean by enough energy in a second. And the second one is that that collision has to be in the proper orientation. And we're going to talk about each one of those conditions separately. So let's look at the energy condition first. Okay, so remember we talked about this idea in class that if I'm going to take a bond and I'm going to break it, right? Breaking a bond always, no matter what, requires an input of energy to happen, right? Bonds don't form unless they're at a lower energy when they're bonded together than when they're separated. So in order to break these bonds, so in order to start that breaking process, I have to add energy. The exact amount of energy that is needed is going to depend on the bonds that are broken. It's going to depend on the reaction that's occurring. But I have to have that input of energy. Now that input of energy, sometimes you'll hear the term called E sub A, which is the activation energy. Not really important, but it's a term you might hear, right? So the activation energy is the amount of energy that is required to start that bond breaking process. And if the collision doesn't have that, they're just gonna bounce off each other, right? Just like if you hit the ball, but it just doesn't go as far, or it's not as productive if it's a lower energy versus, it has to have that energy threshold in order for it to work. Okay, so it's got to have enough energy to start the bond breaking process. And the other part that we need to think about here is that the collision has to be in the right orientation, because the key thing here for us to keep in mind is that the breaking and the making of bonds are happening simultaneously. What that means is that it doesn't happen where all of the bonds break and then the bonds make. It means that there's they're making and breaking at the same time. So if I'm thinking about this, right, then I have A and I have B, A2 and I have B2, right? And then when they collide, we form some sort of complex where the bonds are both making and breaking, right? So I'm in the process of breaking these bonds, and I'm in the process of making these bonds in a kind of a transition to get to A2 and B2. Okay, so in order for this to happen, they have to collide in an orientation that allows for that bond breaking and bond making to happen. If you think about it, if these two collide this way, right, if I collide in this orientation, there's no way for me to make and break the bonds to make this bond, right? They're not touching each other, they're not near each other, so this collision isn't going to be productive because it's not in the right orientation, right? So the collision has to be in the right orientation to allow bonds to break and form, right? Right, so because these are happening simultaneously, the collision has to be in the orientation that allows the bonds to break and make. Okay, so that's two things, right? Collision has to have enough energy, and it has to be in the right orientation. Orientation, think about it, you're playing baseball, right? You hit the ball glances off the top of the bat. It's not going to be a home run, just like kicking a soccer ball. Sometimes it goes in the goal, sometimes it doesn't, right? Depending on the angle of your foot, sometimes it goes the way you want it to, sometimes it doesn't, all because of the orientation of that collision. So a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, just like most of the time when you hit a baseball, you don't hit a home run. Same thing here. Most, and in fact, the vast majority of collisions between reactant molecules are not productive. And by not productive, we mean that they don't result in a reaction. Right? They result in bouncing off of each other. So the vast majority of collisions either don't have enough energy or don't occur in the right orientation, or both. Very, very small fraction of them are productive. And then we think about the number of productive collisions being those that result in a reaction per unit time. That is how we're going to define the rate or the speed of a chemical reaction. So the rate at which reactants turn into products is really determined by the number of productive collisions over time. So when you think about the things that we could potentially change to impact the number of productive collisions over time, that's how we're going to change the rate. And that's the stuff that we're going to explore in our next class. Okay. So just to recap, right? Collision theory. Reactions occur when molecules collide and in the right orientation and with enough energy to start the bond breaking and bond making process. When that happens, reactions occur and products are formed. Most collisions are not productive. Most just result in the reactant molecules bouncing off each other. But the fraction of collisions that are productive result in the formation of products. Right? The number of productive collisions per unit time is what results in a reaction. Okay. So what I want you to think about ahead of our next class, and think about, maybe write down some thoughts down here where it says, down there on your note sheet. How could you change? What things do you think you could change to impact that number of productive collisions over time? So how do you make a chemical reaction happen faster or slower? Because we might want to change it in both directions, right? Think about food cooking versus food preserving. I should think about it, write down some thoughts, and we'll start here in class next time we meet. Thank you.